walking both through the process and talking with it about your colleagues. So I'm going to talk specifically about systematic reviews and working with the librarians at the Biomedical Library. My name is Rikke Ogawa. I'm the director of the Lisa M. Darling Biomedical Library and Science and Engineering Library. So I am really excited to talk to you about systematic reviews and about, in general, some of the wonderful opportunities you have in working with librarians and some processes that can help you simplify this space. If you hear some background noise, it's lunchtime for LAUSD, and so I'm working in my living room and my son's just next to me eating lunch. So if you can't hear anything I'm saying, or you need me to repeat anything, or I'm going too fast, or you want to go in a different direction, please do just let me know. So what I'm going to cover in my portion today is talking about review types and sort of stages of the systematic review process. I'll walk you a little bit through the Prisma process that Ami mentioned, as well as how you can partner with librarians and some of the tips and tricks we can provide. I wanted to start with the review stages, review types and stages, because I find that I get a lot of people who come to me saying, I'm doing a systematic review, and I have to sort of talk them through the process of whether or not what they're doing is a systematic review. A systematic review involves a systematic search for appraisal and synthesis of the research evidence that you have in a particular topic, defined and controlled topic. Often those topics take the form of a PICO question, a question that involves a population or a problem, an intervention, or potentially an exposure, comparator, or an outcome that you're looking for. They don't all fall in that strict definition. Ami's had elements of that space. But sometimes I find people are coming to me and they're asking for different types of literature review. So they might be asking for a scoping review where they want to know more, what is the size or the breadth or the scope of the literature available in something. It's beyond a review article, like a traditional review article where you might pick and choose your favorite articles that are most meaningful or most highly cited in a topic area. You're really looking at the whole area and sort of how big is the question that you're looking at. A very popular review that I've received, that we receive consultation requests for now, is a mapping review. And I put a little image of a subway map in there. It's kind of the idea of where is research going in a field. It's not everything about how big the problem is. It's, what are the most popular interventions for something? What is providing a lot of groundwork as we go forward, and looks like a promising area to consider. It often involves categorizing existing literature and identifying gaps. So a mapping review is often something that's a really good precursor to something that you might want to invest long-term in for focused research. And then there's also the idea of a meta-analysis, which usually starts as a systematic review and then evolves into a statistical analysis component that gets combined with a quantitative studies that you find in a systematic review. I put a really bad forest plot example up there as an option for this. This involves more people than just the librarian and the initial research team. This type of review would often involve also consulting with a statistician or several statisticians as you go through the process. So these are just a few of the types of reviews that can be used. On our library guide for systematic reviews, we have, I think, a list of 12+ types of reviews. And so the thing that you might be thinking of as a systematic review might have a different name. And so there might be a different approach of how you want to start that. If you're doing a systematic review, there are about 15 separate steps and many people that you might use in a systematic review. So this is sort of like a timeline. Ami had talked about all of the steps that she had gone through. This is kind of a more detailed version of that, and who partners with you where in those different reviews. So you might start as as the researcher, formulating what you think is the right question that you'd like to search. And you might consult with the librarian about what other systematic reviews have previously been done in that space. You would probably use that information to help generate the start of your protocol, and we'll talk about protocols in a second. And then working with the librarian to devise the search strategy, as Ami talked about, sort of the back and forth and talking about all of the different controlled vocabularies you can use to search. The librarian would probably also conduct the search for you and work through the deduplication of results. And then your research team would go through and screen abstracts. As Ami indicated, you have to have more than one researcher and preferably an odd number of researchers to help you through that part of the process. Obtaining full text is the next step. The librarian can assist you with that, and we can also show you some tips and tricks for different softwares that you may be using to manage your information workflows that could also download the full text for you. And then you go through again the screening of the full text and possibly the snowballing out of literature from those articles that you wanted to include. Snowballing is a way of searching where you say, hey, these are the articles that are most important to me, and then I will see who cited them since they were written or who they cited to see if there's anything that I've missed in my inclusion and my search strategies to make sure I have a holistic view of what I'm doing. Then data extraction and data synthesis, if you're doing something like a meta-analysis, is important to involve a statistician. At some point, these particular steps often take months to years, and so there is an opportunity to connect with the librarian and recheck to make sure you haven't missed anything really important that just got published before you submit to a journal. If you're doing the meta-analysis part, you want to do that just before you do the write-up. And those are sort of the basic steps. I know it seems like a lot, but it's actually something that just keeps running and you know it's going behind the scenes. Having it visually outlined, though, helps you see how much progress you've made. So, for example, Ami's all the way down here at number 9. Even though it feels like it might be a 15-stage process, she's on the downward slope heading towards completion. So these types of studies are guided by Prisma, which is something that Ami mentioned. Prisma stands for the Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analyses. It's a way to help report out your results in a structured format that everyone can understand and know what steps you went through to complete the systematic review. A Prisma protocols and Prisma guidelines are often required by many, if not most, of the major journals that publish systematic reviews. And so they will ask you if this was a Prisma compliant study and ask you to link to your protocol potentially as part of the submission process. So it helps you set out at the beginning what are your primary and secondary outcomes that Ami discussed earlier. It helps reviewers and readers critically appraise the final review. As scholarship is a discussion, it's not like we just publish and then leave it out there. It's published, read by others, and people comment back and forth. And so it gives people an opportunity to do that. And it's, as I said before, a framework for publishing your review. So there are a couple of different pieces to Prisma, and there will be a bunch of links throughout my presentation. And as this presentation is being recorded, the PowerPoint is also going to be made available to the group. So if you want the particular URLs, you can have that in here. The checklist, the Prisma P checklist, which is the protocol for how it's done, was initially published in 2015. And this gives you a step-by-step. Here are the questions they're going to ask. Here are the things you need to consider. It's a 17-point protocol, and it helps you think through all of the pieces of how you're going to do this research. So think of it just like a protocol or a method for any bench science you were going to do. This is just one for the literature review. In addition to the Prisma P checklist, they have this registry called Prospero. And it's a registry of systematic reviews where you can submit what you're working on, and others, you can also search for what other people are working on related to systematic reviews. Prospero accepts protocols for reviews with at least one health-related outcome. So this isn't for a systematic review or a scoping review where you're thinking about, what are the factors that go into acceptance in medical school programs or things like that. That wouldn't be included in Prospero, but clinical-related outcomes or healthcare-related interventions would be. It gives you the ability to check for what work has already been done. So Ami pointed out that there had been a previously published study in 2017 in the direction that she wanted. We know that not every research task we undertake always ends up in a published study. And so there is an opportunity to look for, what people have done previously that maybe didn't result in publication or that is still in process. It's also an area, if you are really interested in this, for you to be able to find partners at other institutions who are working on similar things. You submit the protocol after it's finalized, but before screening begins. So often the protocol isn't finalized until you've worked with the librarian on what the search strategy is. That's one of those points of the methodology that helps you sort of keep on task and honest to the science that you set out to do in this space. So you want to have your search strategy finalized. You want to have discussion of what your inclusion/exclusion criteria is, what grading system you might be using. And then after you've had all of that together as part of your protocol and written out, you submit to Prospero. So search strategy, and that's really part of the reason that I wanted to be here. Now, Ami talked a little bit about her experience with Bethany, and I'm really glad that you covered the Boolean operators and, or, and not. Thank you. I know that as students at David Geffen, you get sort of like 1 or 2 sessions with the librarian in week 0 and maybe week 1 or 2 about how to do searching. And so I do want to say that it's a different beast, as Ami had said, between searching for sort of, your clinical care question where you might have spelled out your search strategy very efficiently with a short set of words. When you're thinking about doing something like a systematic review or a scoping review or a meta-analysis, you really need to consider the librarian as an expert partner. You all are getting your MDs so that you will be doctors and certified according to the state and able to treat patients. Librarians go through a graduate program of their own where they get an MLIS or some version of that. And we learn about controlled vocabulary and organization of knowledge. So we're sort of your specialists for information. It's just like you would send somebody to a dermatologist if they had a skin condition. Come see us if you have a question that's sort of bigger about information needs. So your search strategy has to be a structured search when you're doing something like a systematic review. Ami already outlined sort of the use of controlled vocabulary such as mesh and keywords and the combination that you have to do. And the reason you do those combinations are because as we ingest literature into databases like PubMed, librarians go through, read the articles, and index the literature to be able to describe what the content of the literature is actually about. So if you've ever done a search in PubMed and you've typed in a word, maybe you were looking for something about diabetic foot, but the article was about hypertension and included an adverse outcome for somebody with diabetic foot, but the article wasn't at all about that topic, Mesh takes care of that. Mesh says, hey, I'm only going to index those articles for the things that are meaningful. Truly meaningful and important about the subject of the article. The keywords comes in because you need to make sure you're not missing any of the recent literature. And for Mesh, it can take 6 to 18 months potentially for articles to get added into PubMed with these assigned subject headings. PubMed adds over 500,000 citations a year, I believe currently. We're at 30 million items in PubMed. So it's there's a priority list of what gets indexed first and when. And so we just want to make sure that we're not missing anything. So we do a combination of those two things. Some common limits, some of which Ami highlighted, and I'll discuss again here. English only studies can be one limit that many people use. I don't always recommend that for systematic reviews, but I know that as American researchers, we're often not fluent enough in our second or third language to be able to read the scientific literature in that capacity. So we'll use and English as an option to just limit to English language studies. To eliminate animal only studies, as Ami had mentioned, to not get those guinea pigs and things like that in there, you can not out the animal only studies. And this is one of those situations where you do like a double negative that makes no sense in the English language, but makes complete sense in Boolean logic. So you say not, animals not human. It has to be the last part of the search phrase for it to work completely in PubMed on the search. And not cause potential errors. And then there are many different types of appropriate study design limits that vary between the clinical question that you're trying to answer. So for example, if you're trying to answer a therapeutic intervention, often a randomized controlled trial, if you're using like a drug or a particular maneuver can be the best option. But if you're looking at prognosis studies or a diagnostic question, RCTs may not be appropriate, especially if you're looking at sort of something that's long-term or an intervention that can't be blinded. And so librarians have literally files of the appropriate types of study design limits. We have resources where we know we can look up different types of search hedges that have been approved and refer you to the right citations to be using as part of your methods portion of your article or your work. So for example, I'm working on one right now that's an economic analysis and cost effectiveness. And it was something where I was like, I haven't done that in a while, but I know that this particular group in England does a very specific, we call it a search hedge or a limiting portion of the search for those studies. And so I knew where to find that and help the person build out that portion of the search. So those are some of the things that the librarians can provide. I skipped over this first bullet point. I wanted to come back to it. We have a service called the Biomedical Library Expert Search Service. #bless. I know it's a little corny, but librarians were real good at acronyms. So it's a service that AMI utilized and that others can utilize to help you make sure that you're using the librarian as best you can. It's a situation where you would it's a form that you would fill out that includes your contact information, your research question, any documentation you've started working on about the protocols, or any sets of articles that you'd like to see in the search, as Ami indicated. And what that does is that form gets sent into a system that the librarians use behind the scenes to allocate who takes on what review. So we have librarians who are experts in public health, in medicine, in nursing, in basic sciences types of protocols, and we have a group of us who have been trained to provide systematic review support. And so we can see what you've submitted and assign the appropriate librarian to work with you on your time frame. Speaking of time frame, when you're working with somebody in the library on this search, Ami had mentioned how important it is to make sure you have reasonable expectations for yourself about how this progress goes. It often takes a lot longer than you think to develop that search strategy. There's a couple of back and forths with the librarian. It can take a few weeks to get it perfected just the way you want and getting the search strategy in the most optimal form. So I thought I'd give you some examples, and hopefully these will work for us and for sharing. I wanted to show you some examples of ones that I've worked on. Some of them can be not so complicated. So I worked on, for example, sorry, I'm trying to flip through my many tabs on my on my screen, the GI Pro work, which was a PROMISE study for patient-reported outcomes in GI health. And that was really looking the most broadly possible for patient-reported outcomes on quality of life. And we chose a few different databases, PubMed, Cochrane, and ProQuad. Ami had mentioned Embase. Embase is also a very common one that we use. If you're using things like psychology or psychiatry related literature, we might also suggest PsycInfo. If you're looking for educational interventions, we could suggest ERIC. These are things that librarians have knowledge of these databases, and so we can help advise where you would go. You can see in this one, we had some combinations of really common medical subject headings and text words for all different kinds of diseases that we were interested in. In this case, we got a lot of results. Like, I think it was, I can't even remember the number that we had for this one. And the types of tests they were looking for were screening tests for patient-reported outcomes. So we had a basis of another study that we could use as part of the evaluation for this. These are not things that I would expect you to know even if you had the best evidence-based medicine class of medical students, because these are really specialized tools to the type of research that you're doing. We had one that also, let me see, instead of going through all of them, I'll pick a pretty simple one. Here's one that was a little bit more complicated. This was a study on root canal treatments for elderly and a particular type of comparison of treatments. And so here we ended up getting really far down into the weeds about different kinds of outcomes that you could have as a health-related outcome for the root canal treatment, as well as what did it mean, like what kind of disease progression or the types of studies that you did, or the types of studies that would help answer how patients fared long-term with this. Like I said, this one was a little bit more complicated, and so you see it written out a little differently. We used the Boolean logic to help combine similar terms and then use the table form as we were writing this together to indicate where the intersections were. These types of things, like I said, are not something that I would ever expect a medical student or medical faculty member to be able to write on their own. This is really where the librarian comes in and says, this term is valuable, that term is giving you a lot of error, and how do we go back and forth with that? Oops. Let me switch back here. Okay. So I want you to take away from all of this, not that you have to be an expert in searching, but that the biomedical library can help you out. We have a guide that we've put together on our website just for systematic reviews that walks you through the process, even more detailed than I did here. The librarians have that blessed service where we can help you develop your search strategy and walk through some of the questions you may have about the systematic review process. We have a multi-tiered layer of service. So if, for example, you really want to just do this on your own and you want to learn how to do it, and you just want the librarian to review a strategy that you've already worked on because you've done this once before and you know this drill, we can provide a level of service where we just review and consult on the search strategy. If what you're looking for is more of an in-depth experience with the librarian where you want them to help be co-collaborators and construct the search for you, download the citations, help you make sure you're understanding the review process and the full text, we can provide that level of service as well. Depending on the level of service you need from the librarians, we encourage you to consider us co-authors on future publications, especially if we do a lot more hands-on digging in for you. But that's a kind of standard agreement that most medical libraries have right now, and is actually part of the Prisma S protocol, or the searching protocol that's still under review and to come out soon. So the biomedical library, bottom line, is here to help you with any of your questions. You can use this guide to help jump off into a blessed request, or if you just have questions, my email address and is at the front of this presentation. And I can assure you, I have one of the most unique names on the Biomedical Library website. So finding Rikke.Ogawa at library.ucla should be pretty easy for you. I would just like to open it up to questions now about searching, about library support, or anything else that you have. Oh, thank you, Vijay, for putting my contact info in there.
Rikke, that was an outstanding overview. I've learned an incredible amount. I've not participated in these systematic reviews before, and I think that this recording will be incredibly valuable to medical students who will have access to it down the road. I think one of the questions that I had as a general user of the electronic library is the ability to get some of these journals. So obviously, there's the whole systematic review, but then you actually have to find the article. And some of the individuals just doing reviews are struggling with that part, especially since there have been some contractual issues with Elsevier, but also in particular with respect to global health, because some of the journals maybe published in Africa may not be available as readily electronically. Can you comment on what the library services are to help obtain the articles that are found in these reviews?
Sure, and I can jump in and show an example in just a second. So regarding Elsevier, I'm not sure how much the medical students have been following this. This is probably not in your day-to-day, but about 1.5 years ago, we had the University of California had a rather challenging situation with one of the world's largest scientific publishers. They wanted to charge us a significant amount more than we were currently paying for renewing our journal licensing agreements, with the addition of providing UC works as open access to the world. The University of California has some policies that our faculty and staff publications should be available to everyone to help build on the science of our great researchers for both the citizens of California and the larger global scholarly community. So as in a process of our usual negotiation, it just broke down a while ago. We're actually back at the table with the publisher and hopefully making progress. We have some good signs in that area. So anytime I can have that moment to mention it, I'll say that in there. But it does create some problems at times when we're trying to get to something. So let me do a screen share again, and I will show you an example of what it looks like in PubMed. So I'm going to start from the library homepage. You always want to start from the library homepage when you're doing searching. We have a link to PubMed at UCLA. You can also get this through the MedNet. It's the same link that's available through MedNet to PubMed. But when you go here, you'll notice at the very end of the URL that you have up here indicates that you're coming from a specific institution. In this case, it's indicating that you have access to what the UC has access to. And so as long as you have your VPN or proxy set up on your computer, you can do a searching. I'm just going to pick hypertension and sub-Saharan Africa. I don't know if I'm spelling that correctly. I'm a horrible speller. Confessions of a librarian. Sometimes you'll see articles indicated here that they're free in PMC, which means you should have access to the full text. PMC is PubMed Central. It's the vehicle that the National Institutes of Health uses to help make NIH-funded research publicly available to the world. But on occasion, let me pick something that I'm pretty sure we have this journal. And it's open access, so that's not going to help you. Sorry. Now you're going to see a back and forth about what is, oh, here we go. Fifth one down is an Elsevier journal. We have access to many articles in the biomedical library and at UCLA in general. This UC eLinks button is what shows up when you use that PubMed at UCLA link. And that UC eLinks will tell you whether or not we have full text access to the article. So it says, hey, we don't have an Elsevier license right now. That's our nice way of trying to advocate while providing something for you. But they also say, hey, the open access is found via unpaywall here. So the unpaywall link will link you to the full text open access if it's not available. So, or if it is available. So for some reason, I guess Elsevier has provided this one for free. It's noted as open access here. If for some reason, sorry, I'm having a dickens of a time with the controls for Zoom. Oops, I just shut down the wrong window. If for some reason there was no unpaywalled option here and it says, sorry, we don't have it, the third link down gives you a request this from the library. This request this from the library asks the library to find you a PDF of that article and send it to your inbox. You use your library card number, which I know nobody remembers what it is. It's the 9 digits on the front of your UCLA Health ID, plus the 1 digit in the upper right-hand corner in the back that you always wondered what it was for. It's for the 10th digit of your library card ID. I'll put in mine. And it will say, oh, hey, I know you. Where would you want to pick this up if you could pick it up? You can't pick it up in person right now. We're closed. But where would you like it delivered to your email inbox? Do you have a specific time limit for it? You can do this for research requests. You can also do this for clinical care emergencies. If there is a specific rush, like you need this tomorrow because you're seeing the patient tomorrow and it's going to make a difference in how you're treating that patient, put that information in there and send an email confirmation to yourself. That way you know you have already requested it. We'll get you any article that we do not own as a library to your email inbox. Officially, I'm supposed to say 7 to 10 working business days, but usually it's more like 2 to 3 for medical literature, because PubMed is connected behind the scenes to medical libraries across the United States and across the world. And so we know what each other has, and we only do very targeted and specific requests for who can provide that content to us. And so it's really a quick turnaround space, and we'll get that email to your inbox right away. You can do that for anything where you see the UCE links and you don't see a full text link. If you do see the UCE links and a full text link, it will pass you through as much as possible. You can also download, the last thing I will say is you can download little applets that go into your browser. This one here is the unpaywall applet that tells me that this is available open access regardless of whether or not Elsevier says it is on this, or PubMed Central knows that it is. And so clicking that open access button will also tell me, but that's sort of not something everybody has on their computer or wants to use their computer space for. So.
Yeah, Dr. Mushra just attested, and I will attest that initially I just wasn't looking up these articles, which was not good for my patients and for my research. And in fact, the turnaround time has been phenomenal. So I do encourage people not to overcome that barrier of clicking on a couple of things and putting in your email. And I've been very impressed with the library services. I realize that we're a bit short on time. I don't know if Dr. Mushra or others had any questions or comments that they would like to make.
I had a quick question actually on, so your presentation, you talked about systematic reviews, but I was wondering about the role of librarians and how we can connect with you for if we're working on, say, like a narrative review, which now I'm like double guessing or second guessing the terms for the reviews, but something that's not quite as formal as a systematic review, but we might want some like extra support in.
Well, that is totally an option. The librarians are always available for consultations. On our library homepage, we have a link to research services. You can set up an appointment. We have a calendaring system where you can say, I just want the next available librarian, or I want a librarian in a specific subject area that can help me. And we can sit there and talk to you about like, how do you do a search, and remind you of all the stuff that's in there about searching somewhere from, you know, those 2 sessions with the librarian early on. And we'll do that kind of help with a narrative review as well. We usually limit those consultations to about an hour and sort of give you some strategies that you can use going forward.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Are there any other comments or questions? Dr. Mushrao, did you have any, nothing? Okay.
No, that was great. Yeah, really good
That's
overview. Seriously, the biomed librarians are like both angels and geniuses. So please utilize them for all your research needs. Every single time I have a consultation with them, whether it's for something small or large, I walk away just awed at how much they know and how helpful they are and how poorly trained the rest of us are in sort of retrieving information efficiently. So they're a really, really great resource.
Well, thanks everybody